I stood alone in my cap and gown at college graduation, scanning empty bleachers where my parents should be sitting. 22 years old, first in my family to graduate college, worked 3 jobs to pay tuition while maintaining a 3.8 GPA in engineering. My phone buzzed with excited messages from classmates' families, but nothing from my own. I watched other graduates hug their proud parents, while mine remained completely absent. No explanation, no apology, just silence. 3 days later, my mother texted asking for $7,600 for my sister Amanda's 27th birthday party. Walking back to my apartment that evening, still wearing my graduation gown, I felt like I was carrying the weight of 4 years on my shoulders. The polyester fabric that should have symbolized achievement now felt like a costume mocking my loneliness. Every step echoed in the empty hallway as I climbed to my third-floor unit, keys jangling with the same hollow sound that had filled the auditorium when my name was called, and no one cheered. I tried calling my parents for the 15th time that day. Dad's phone went straight to voicemail again, the same generic message he had never bothered to personalize. Mom's rang 4 times before clicking to her cheerful recording about leaving a message after the beep. I hung up without speaking, staring at my engineering diploma propped against the microwave where I had placed it hours earlier. The silence in my studio apartment felt suffocating. I loosened my tie and kicked off the dress shoes that had given me blisters during the ceremony. Outside my window, I could see families loading graduation gifts into car trunks, bouquets of flowers catching the late afternoon sunlight. Parents were taking endless photos with their graduates, everyone smiling and laughing, like they were living in some commercial for family happiness. My phone rang, and hope flickered in my chest until I saw my Aunt Sarah's name on the screen. At least someone from my family remembered today existed. "Reed, honey, congratulations on your big day," she said, but something in her voice sounded strained. "I'm so sorry I couldn't make it down from Portland. How was the ceremony? Did your parents get good seats?" The question hit me like cold water. "They didn't come, Aunt Sarah. I thought maybe you knew why." Silence stretched between us for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully measured. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm sure they had a good reason. Maybe traffic or car trouble or something unexpected came up. Do you know where they are?" I pressed, sensing she was holding something back. Another pause. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Reed, I thought you knew. I saw the photos on Facebook. They drove up to Seattle for Jessica's graduation today. Amanda's friend from high school. Your mom posted all these pictures of them at the University of Washington ceremony." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sank onto my futon, still wearing my graduation cap, and opened Facebook with trembling fingers. There they were, my parents beaming with pride, standing next to Jessica Martinez in her cap and gown. My mother wore the navy blue dress she had bought specifically for my graduation, the one she had shown me over FaceTime 3 weeks ago, while gushing about how excited she was for my special day. My father had his arm around Jessica's shoulders, grinning wider than I had seen in family photos for years. The caption under my mother's post read, "So proud of this amazing young woman. Watching Jessica graduate from engineering school today filled our hearts with joy. Some kids just make you feel like family." Engineering school. Jessica had graduated with the same degree I had just earned, but somehow her achievement warranted my parents' presence, while mine warranted silence. I scrolled through more photos, each one twisting the knife deeper. Jessica cutting a celebration cake with my parents flanking her like proud relatives. My father holding a bouquet of roses that looked identical to ones I had seen other graduates receiving from their families. My mother dabbing her eyes with a tissue, apparently moved to tears by someone else's child's success. The timestamp on the photos showed they had been posted during my ceremony. While I was walking across the stage to receive my diploma, my parents were 4 hours away celebrating a girl they barely knew, treating her like the child they wished they had, instead of supporting the son they actually did have. I called Amanda, my 26-year-old sister who still lived at home, despite having dropped out of community college twice. She answered on the first ring sounding breathless and excited. "Reed, how did graduation go? I was totally going to come, but I had this really important thing I couldn't reschedule," she said, her voice bright with false enthusiasm. "What important thing?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "I went with Mom and Dad to see Jessica graduate. You remember Jessica, right? She's been like family to us since high school. Mom and Dad thought it would be really meaningful for me to see what graduation looks like since I'm planning to go back to school soon." The casual way she said it, like attending someone else's graduation was more valuable than attending her own brother's, left me speechless. Amanda continued chattering about how beautiful the University of Washington campus was, how proud she felt watching Jessica succeed, how inspiring it was to see someone follow through on their dreams. "Did any of you think about the fact that I was graduating today too?" I finally managed to ask. "Oh, well, yeah, but your thing was just at the community college, right? Jessica was graduating from a real university with a real engineering degree." "Amanda, I graduated from Oregon State with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. The same degree Jessica got. I've been working toward this for 4 years." "Oh." Her voice deflated slightly. "I guess I got confused. Mom said your graduation wasn't that big a deal since you're planning to get your master's degree anyway. She said the real celebration would be when you finish your actual education." I hung up without saying goodbye, staring at my diploma with new eyes. 4 years of 18-hour days balancing coursework with jobs at the campus bookstore, the local pizza place, and weekend shifts doing data entry. 4 years of living on ramen noodles and generic cereal while my parents sent Amanda money for shopping trips and spa days. 4 years of maintaining Dean's List status while working to pay for textbooks my parents said they couldn't afford, even though they had just financed a new SUV for Amanda's convenience. All of it had led to this moment, sitting alone in my apartment, still wearing my graduation cap, realizing my family had chosen to celebrate a stranger's success over acknowledging mine. The diploma that had felt so significant that morning now seemed like expensive paper documenting my isolation rather than my achievement. I took off my graduation cap and set it on my kitchen counter next to a stack of unpaid bills. Tomorrow, I would start my new job at Morrison Engineering, the firm that had recruited me based on my academic performance and internship evaluations. I would begin the career I had worked so hard to earn, surrounded by colleagues who valued expertise and dedication. But tonight, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, understanding for the first time that my family's love came with conditions I had never learned to meet. The silence that had filled the auditorium when my name was called would follow me home, settling into the spaces where support and celebration should have been. 3 days passed in a blur of orientation meetings at Morrison Engineering and apartment hunting for a place closer to my new job. I had thrown myself into work preparations, grateful for the distraction from the growing silence on my phone. No congratulatory calls, no follow-up texts asking how graduation went, no acknowledgement that anything significant had happened in my life. I was reviewing technical specifications for my first project assignment when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Finally, I thought maybe an apology or explanation for their absence. I opened the message and felt my stomach drop. "Hi, honey, hope graduation was nice. Listen, Amanda's 27th birthday is coming up next month, and we promised her the most amazing Sweet 27 party ever. We've been planning this for over a year, and it's going to be absolutely magical. The venue we booked requires a deposit of $7,600 by this Friday, and that's on top of the catering decorations, DJ photographer, and party favors we've already arranged. We know this is a lot, but Amanda has been looking forward to this celebration since her 25th birthday didn't go as planned. We told her we'd make this one extra special to make up for it. Since you're doing so well now with your engineering degree and new job, we figured you'd want to help make your sister's dreams come true. Family is everything, right? Let us know when you can transfer the money. Thanks, sweetheart." I read the message 3 times each reading, making the audacity more breathtaking. No mention of missing my graduation. No congratulations on my new job. No acknowledgement that asking for $7,600 was an enormous request. Just casual assumption that my success existed to fund Amanda's party. My phone immediately rang with a call from Amanda herself. "Reed, did you see Mom's text? I am literally so excited I can barely breathe. This party is going to be incredible. We've got the ballroom at the Riverside Hotel booked for the whole evening with a cocktail hour, sit-down dinner for 60 people and dancing until midnight. The theme is Glittering Dreams, so everything is going to be gold and silver with crystal centerpieces and fairy lights everywhere." She spoke rapidly, her voice pitched with excitement, describing elaborate decorations and menu options, like she was planning a wedding rather than a birthday party for someone pushing 30. "Amanda, that sounds very expensive, Mom," I said carefully. "It is, but I deserve it. 27 is such an important age. It's like the last year of my mid-20s, so it needs to be perfect. Mom and Dad promised me that if I didn't get the Sweet 16 I wanted, they'd make up for it with an amazing Sweet 27 instead. And I've been so good lately, hardly asking for anything major except the car payment help and the credit card thing last month." I pulled up my family's group chat and scrolled back through months of messages I had mostly ignored while focused on school. The pattern became clear immediately. Amanda asking for money for various emergencies and experiences, my parents agreeing to help, then scrambling to figure out how to pay for their promises. A $500 emergency car repair in January, $800 for a weekend trip to San Francisco with friends in February, $1,200 for a dental procedure that insurance apparently wouldn't cover in March. Each request followed the same pattern. Amanda would present the need as urgent and essential. My parents would immediately promise to handle it. Then, they would start calculating how to divide the cost among family members. My cousins had been asked to chip in for various Amanda-related expenses. My grandparents had been solicited for loans that were never repaid. Even my Uncle Tom, who lived on a teacher's salary, had been pressed to contribute to Amanda's various crises. But this request was different in scale and entitlement. $7,600 wasn't emergency money or temporary assistance. It was funding a luxury event that most people couldn't afford for their actual weddings. "Amanda, why do you need such an expensive party?" I asked. "Because I'm worth it," she replied, without hesitation. "And because Mom and Dad promised. They said since you're the successful one now with your fancy degree and everything, you'd obviously want to help family. It's not like you have anything else to spend money on, living in that tiny apartment and driving that old car." The assumption in her voice that my money naturally belonged to family priorities made my jaw clench. I had been driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic because every spare dollar went toward tuition, books, and survival. I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment because it was what I could afford, while maintaining my focus on academics rather than earning potential. "Amanda, I just graduated. I haven't even received my first paycheck yet." "But you will, and it's going to be huge, right? Engineers make really good money. Mom looked it up online and said entry-level engineers make like $60,000 a year, which is more than Dad makes at the warehouse. So you can totally afford to help with this one thing." I stared at my reflection in my laptop screen, seeing the exhaustion of someone who had worked multiple jobs throughout college while watching his sister receive family financial support for recreational activities. The casual way she mentioned my father's warehouse salary stung, not because there was anything wrong with his job, but because it highlighted how my parents prioritized Amanda's wants over their own financial limitations. "Has anyone else in the family been asked to contribute this much?" I asked. "Well, everyone's contributing what they can. Grandma and Grandpa are doing $2,000. Uncle Tom is doing $800. Cousin Jake is doing $600. You're just doing the most because you have the most ability to help now." I did quick math in my head. The family contribution she had mentioned added up to $3,400, meaning they were still short over $4,000 even with my requested $7,600. This party was going to cost more than $11,000 total, more than some people spent on cars. Amanda, this party cost more than I spent on my entire last year of college. That's different, though. College is just spending money on yourself. This is spending money on family, which is way more important. Besides, Mom said you'll probably get a signing bonus or something at your new job, so you'll make the money back really quickly. The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with Amanda alternating between excited party planning details and casual guilt trips about family loyalty. She had clearly been coached on talking points, mentioning how proud the family would be to see her celebration, how meaningful it would be for everyone to come together, and how this was exactly the kind of thing successful family members do for each other. When I finally ended the call, I sat staring at my phone and trying to process the magnitude of entitlement I had just experienced. My family had missed my graduation to attend a stranger's ceremony, then asked me to fund an extravagant party for my sister's birthday, as if my success existed solely to bankroll their choices. I opened my banking app and looked at my account balance, $3,200, saved over 4 years of careful budgeting and sacrifice. Not enough to cover Amanda's party request, even if I emptied everything I had worked so hard to accumulate. The realization that hit me hardest wasn't the financial impossibility of their request. It was the assumption that my achievements belonged to them, that my education and career prospects existed to solve their self-created financial problems, and that my value as a family member was measured entirely by my ability to provide funding for their priorities. I looked around my small apartment at the secondhand furniture I had accumulated over 4 years and the diploma still propped against my microwave. Everything I owned represented sacrifice and planning and delayed gratification. Everything they were asking for represented impulse and indulgence and expectation that someone else would handle the consequences. For the first time in my life, I understood that my family saw my success not as something to celebrate, but as something to exploit. I spent the next 2 days thinking about how to respond to my family's request. Part of me wanted to write a long explanation about why $7,600 was unreasonable, detailing my actual financial situation and the sacrifice it would require. Another part wanted to simply ignore the request and hope they would realize the absurdity on their own. But as I sat in my first team meeting at Morrison Engineering, listening to my new colleagues discuss problem-solving approaches and efficient solutions, a different idea crystallized. My manager, Janet Thompson, was explaining how sometimes the most elegant engineering solutions were also the most direct ones. Overthinking a problem often leads to overcomplicated solutions. She said, sketching a simple diagram on the whiteboard. Sometimes the best response is proportional and precise. That afternoon, I opened my phone's payment app and sent exactly $7 to Amanda with the message, "Congrats on Amanda's sweet 27. This is $7 for her 27 years. Fair deal." The response was immediate and explosive. My phone rang within 30 seconds. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and when I answered, I could hear her voice shaking with rage. "Reed Joseph Matthews. What in the hell is wrong with you, $7? Are you completely out of your mind? Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" Amanda called me crying because she thought you were making fun of her. This is the most disrespectful thing you have ever done to this family. I contributed $1 for each year of Amanda's life, I said calmly. That seems proportional. Proportional. We're talking about your sister's happiness here. We're talking about family loyalty and stepping up when people need you. We raised you better than this selfish, petty behavior. Did you raise me to expect my family to miss my graduation and then ask for thousands of dollars 3 days later? The line went quiet for a moment. Then my mother's voice returned colder and more controlled. Your graduation was a personal achievement. Amanda's party is a family celebration. there's a difference between something that benefits you and something that benefits all of us. And frankly, Reed, your attitude lately has been very concerning. Success seems to be going to your head. Before I could respond, she hung up. Within minutes, my phone exploded with texts and calls from various family members. My father's message was short and brutal. Disappointed in the man you've become. Amanda is heartbroken. Fix this, or don't bother coming to family events anymore. Amanda sent a stream of crying face emojis followed by, I can't believe my own brother would humiliate me like this. Everyone is going to think our family doesn't support each other. How am I supposed to explain to my friends that my brother sent $7 for my birthday, like I'm some random person he barely knows? But the messages that disturbed me most came from extended family members who had apparently been brought into the drama. My cousin Jake called me directly. Dude, what are you doing? Your mom called my mom crying about how you're having some kind of breakdown and refusing to help with Amanda's party. She's telling everyone you've changed completely since graduating and that success has made you forget where you came from. Jake, they asked me for $7,600. That's more than I have in my entire savings account. Yeah, I know it's a lot, but come on, it's Amanda's birthday. And your parents said you're making engineer money now, so you can afford to help out family. I haven't even received my first paycheck yet. And even when I do, $7,600 is still an enormous amount of money for a birthday party. Look, I get that it's expensive, but think about what this looks like. Everyone else in the family is contributing what they can, and you send $7 like you're making some kind of joke. It makes you look really bad, man. The conversation with Jake revealed something that made my stomach turn. My parents had been calling family members for weeks, building consensus that Reed should be the primary contributor to Amanda's party fund. They had presented my engineering degree and new job as evidence that I had an obligation to solve the family's financial shortfall. Everyone had been primed to see my success as the solution to their planning problem. My Uncle Tom called next, his voice gentler, but still concerned. Reed, I don't know what's going on between you and your parents, but this situation is getting out of hand. Your mother called your Aunt Sarah in tears, saying you've become cruel and selfish since graduation. She's worried that your new job is changing your values. Uncle Tom, did anyone tell you they missed my graduation to go to a stranger's ceremony instead? Silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean? I explained about finding the Facebook photos, about discovering my parents had chosen to attend Jessica Martinez's graduation while ignoring mine completely. Uncle Tom listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Reed, I had no idea. Your mother told everyone you had a small ceremony that wasn't a big deal and that you had specifically said you didn't want family there because it would be too much pressure. The manipulation was even deeper than I had realized. My parents had not only chosen to miss my graduation, they had actively lied to extended family about the circumstances, making it seem like their absence was at my request. They had built a narrative where I was the difficult one, the ungrateful child who had rejected family support and was now withholding financial assistance out of spite. That evening, I received the most revealing call of all. My brother Marcus, who was 24 and lived in Denver working as a restaurant manager, called me after apparently receiving his own family pressure. Read what is going on. Mom called me freaking out about Amanda's party and you sending some insulting amount of money. She wants me to talk to you about family responsibility. Marcus and I had always been close despite the 3-year age gap, so I told him everything. The missed graduation, the Facebook photos, the outrageous money request, and the family pressure campaign that followed my proportional response. Jesus Christ, Reed, they really missed your graduation for Jessica's? That's messed up on a whole different level. Did they ask you to contribute to Amanda's party? Yeah, they wanted $1,500 from me, but I told them I'm barely making rent in Denver and can't swing it. But they didn't give me nearly as much grief as they're apparently giving you. How much did they tell you the party costs? Mom said around $4,000 total, and that if everyone pitched in a little bit, it would be manageable. I laughed bitterly. They told me it costs over $11,000, They asked me for $7,600, told you it was only $4,000 total, and made everyone else think their small contributions would be enough. Are you serious? They lied to me about the actual cost. Marcus, I think they lied to everyone about everything. Uncle Tom thought I asked them not to come to my graduation. Cousin Jake thinks I'm having some kind of success-induced breakdown. They've been managing everyone's perception of this situation to make me look like the problem. That's really manipulative, Reed, like sociopathic level manipulation. The conversation with Marcus opened my eyes to the sophisticated nature of my family's campaign. They weren't just asking for money and applying pressure when I refused. They were actively managing multiple narratives with different family members, controlling information to maximize support for their position, while minimizing sympathy for mine. By the end of the week, I had received contact from virtually every family member I could name, each one having received a carefully crafted version of events that painted me as ungrateful, selfish, and possibly mentally unstable due to sudden success. The $7 payment had been presented as evidence of my cruelty, rather than a proportional response to an outrageous request. But the most disturbing revelation came in a voicemail from my Aunt Sarah, who called after speaking with my mother at length. "Reed, honey, I'm really concerned about you. Your mother told me some things that are very worrying. She said you've been making threats about the family, talking about cutting people off, and showing signs of paranoia and anger that aren't like you at all. She thinks the stress of your new job might be affecting your mental health. I think you should consider talking to someone professional about managing this transition. Success can be harder to handle than we expect sometimes." I realized my parents had escalated beyond financial manipulation and social pressure. They were now suggesting I was mentally unstable, creating a narrative that would justify more extreme measures to get what they wanted. The $7 payment had triggered not just anger, but a calculated campaign to discredit my judgment and autonomy. That night, I made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. I was going to have to protect myself from my own family. The first thing I did Monday morning was visit a locksmith. My parents had a key to my apartment from when I was in college, and occasionally needed them to water plants during extended campus trips. That level of access had felt normal when I was a struggling student who might need emergency help. Now it felt like a vulnerability I couldn't afford. "You want all the locks changed?" asked Gary the locksmith, who met me at my building during his lunch break. He was probably in his 50s, with calloused hands and a straightforward manner that I appreciated. "Everything. Door locks, deadbolt, even the window latches if you think they're necessary." "You having some kind of trouble, son?" I hesitated, then decided honesty might be useful. "Family situation that's gotten complicated." "I need to control who has access to my space?" Gary nodded, like he had heard similar requests before. "Family can be the hardest relationships to navigate. New locks will run you about $250 for everything, including labor." "You want me to upgrade the deadbolt to something more secure while I'm at it?" "Yes, absolutely." While Gary worked, I called my wireless provider and added a security feature to my phone account that would alert me if anyone tried to access my voicemails or call logs. Then I contacted my bank and set up additional verification requirements for any account changes or large transactions. The conversation with Marcus had made me paranoid about what other information my parents might have access to. My landlord, Mrs. Chen, knocked on my door while the locksmith was finishing up. She was a kind woman in her 60s who managed the 12-unit building with a combination of firmness and genuine care for her tenants. "Yes, Reed, I wanted to check with you about something. A woman came by yesterday claiming to be your mother, asking for a spare key to check on your well-being. She seemed very upset and said there was a family emergency." My blood ran cold. "Did you give her access?" "Of course not. I never give keys to anyone without written authorization from the tenant, regardless of who they claim to be." But she was quite persistent. She mentioned something about you having mental health issues and needing family intervention. "Mrs. Chen, I'm having some family problems right now. If anyone claiming to be related to me asks for access to my apartment, Please don't provide it and let me know immediately." Her expression grew concerned. "Is there something I should be worried about? Should I contact building security? I don't think it will escalate to anything dangerous, but I'd appreciate knowing if anyone comes around asking about me." "Of course. Are you all right, dear? You look stressed." I realized this was probably the first time an adult had asked about my well-being in weeks, without attaching conditions or expectations to the question. "I'm managing, Mrs. Chen. Thank you for asking." That evening, I installed a doorbell camera I ordered online, positioning it to capture anyone approaching my apartment. The setup process was simple enough that I finished before dark, testing the motion detection and smartphone alerts to make sure everything worked properly. I also blocked my parents' phone numbers, Marcus's suggestion from our last conversation. "You can't have a rational discussion with people who are actively trying to manipulate everyone around them," he had said. "Sometimes you have to cut off their access until they're ready to behave like adults." The week passed quietly. I threw myself into learning my new role at Morrison Engineering, grateful for work that required analytical thinking and clear problem solving. My colleagues were welcoming and professional, creating the kind of environment where competence and collaboration were valued over drama and manipulation. But the peace was temporary. Friday evening, I was reviewing technical drawings for a project when my doorbell camera sent an alert to my phone. I opened the app and saw my neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Rodriguez, looking agitated and repeatedly pressing my doorbell. Reed, are you home? I need to talk to you about something strange that happened this afternoon." I opened the door to find Mrs. Rodriguez holding her phone, her expression a mixture of concern and anger. "Reed, this is going to sound crazy, but I think someone tried to break into your apartment today while you were at work." She showed me a video on her phone, recorded through her own peephole camera. The footage showed a woman I recognized as my mother walking along our hallway, testing door handles and trying to peer through windows. At one point, she stopped at my door and produced what looked like a key, trying unsuccessfully to get it to work. She tried that key for at least 5 minutes, Mrs. Rodriguez explained. When it didn't work, she went to the building manager's office. I followed her down to make sure she wasn't doing anything dangerous. What happened with the building manager? She told him she was your mother, and there was a family emergency. She said you weren't answering your phone and she needed to check on your mental health. She had some story about you having a breakdown and possibly being suicidal. The escalation from financial pressure to attempted unauthorized entry felt like a line being crossed. My parents weren't just manipulating other family members anymore. They were attempting to physically access my living space, using fabricated mental health concerns as justification. The building manager didn't buy it, Mrs. Rodriguez continued. He said policy requires written authorization from tenants for any emergency access, and that if there was a real mental health crisis, she should contact police for a wellness check rather than asking for keys. Did she leave after that? Not immediately. She sat in her car in the parking lot for about an hour, just watching the building. I took pictures of her license plate in case we needed them later. Mrs. Rodriguez showed me photos of my mother's silver SUV parked across the street, positioned for clear sight lines to both the building entrance and my specific apartment window. The timestamps showed she had maintained surveillance for over 90 minutes. Reed, I don't know what's going on with your family, but this behavior seems concerning. If someone is trying to access your apartment without permission and making false claims about your mental health, you might want to document everything. That night, I reviewed my doorbell camera footage and found more disturbing evidence. Over the past week, someone matching my father's description had walked past my building multiple times during hours when I would typically be at work. The footage showed him pausing to look at my windows, taking pictures with his phone, and on one occasion attempting to climb the fire escape to the second-floor landing. The realization that my parents were conducting surveillance on my home and attempting unauthorized entry transformed my understanding of the situation. This wasn't just family drama over money anymore. This was harassment with clear potential for escalation. I spent Saturday morning at the police station filing a report about the attempted break-in and providing the video evidence Mrs. Rodriguez had shared. The officer who took my statement, Sergeant Williams, seemed familiar with similar situations. Family disputes can get complicated when money and access are involved, she said, reviewing the footage on my phone. The attempted entry with an old key might not rise to the level of breaking and entering, but the false claims about your mental health to building management could be considered harassment or fraud. What should I do if this continues? Keep documenting everything. Save all text messages, emails, and voicemails. Keep recording any attempted contact or surveillance. If they escalate to more aggressive behavior, we'll have a clear pattern to reference. I left the police station feeling both validated and anxious. Having official documentation of my family's behavior felt necessary, but it also made the situation feel more serious and permanent than I had wanted to acknowledge. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. When I answered, I heard my father's voice. "Reed, we need to talk. This situation has gone too far, and you're making choices that are going to hurt the whole family." "Dad, I blocked your number because I don't want to discuss this anymore." "How did you get this number?" "I borrowed a phone from someone at work." "Reed, listen to me. Amanda's party is next weekend, and she's devastated about the money situation. Your mother is having anxiety attacks over this whole mess. You're causing real harm to people who love you." "I'm causing harm, Dad. You tried to break into my apartment with an old key. Mom lied to my building manager about my mental health. You've been surveilling my building and taking pictures. We were worried about you. You've been acting erratically since graduation, cutting off contacts, sending insulting money like you're mocking your sister. We thought you might be having some kind of crisis." The gaslighting was so blatant that I almost laughed. "Dad, the crisis is that you missed my graduation to attend a stranger's ceremony, then asked me for thousands of dollars I don't have, then started harassing me when I said no. We didn't miss your graduation, Reed. We made a choice about where our presence would be most meaningful. Jessica has been like family to us for years, and her parents couldn't afford to attend. Someone had to be there for her. Someone had to be there for her instead of your actual son. You didn't need us there, Reed. You had your achievement and your degree and your new job. Jessica needed support. Sometimes being family means making sacrifices for people who need help." I hung up and immediately called Mrs. Chen to inform her about the continued contact attempts. She assured me that building policy was clear about unauthorized access and that she would notify police if anyone made additional false claims about emergencies. But that evening, I discovered the situation was escalating beyond my apartment building. My doorbell camera captured my father walking slowly past my building again, but this time he was accompanied by two other people I didn't recognize. They spent several minutes pointing at my windows and discussing something I couldn't hear. The realization that my parents were involving additional people in their surveillance made me understand that changing locks and filing police reports might not be enough protection. This was becoming a coordinated effort that could potentially affect my employment, my safety, and my ability to build an independent life. Sunday night, I called Marcus to update him on the developments. "Reed, this is getting scary. They're not just manipulating family anymore. They're actually stalking you. You need to be really careful about your safety." "I know, I'm documenting everything, and I filed a police report, but I'm worried about what they might do next." "Have you considered that they might try to contact your employer or do something to mess with your job?" The possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made immediate sense. If my parents were willing to make false mental health claims to my building manager, they might be willing to make similar claims to my employer to pressure me into compliance. Monday morning, I would have to consider how to protect not just my home and privacy, but also the career I had worked so hard to build. I was 3 weeks into my new position at Morrison Engineering, finally feeling confident about my daily responsibilities, when my manager, Janet Thompson, knocked on my cubicle wall with an expression I had never seen before. "Reed, I need you to come with me to the conference room. There are 2 police officers here who need to speak with you." My stomach dropped, but I followed Janet down the hallway, aware that several colleagues had stopped their conversations to watch. In the conference room, 2 uniformed officers sat at the table with notepads and serious expressions. "Mr. Matthews, I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Johnson. We need to ask you some questions about a report that was filed concerning your family." I sat down, my mind racing through possibilities. "What kind of report?" Officer Martinez consulted his notepad. "Your parents filed a complaint alleging that you've stolen money from your family and that you may be experiencing a mental health crisis that requires intervention. They've provided evidence of threatening communications and erratic behavior that has them concerned for your safety and the safety of others." The words felt surreal. "I'm sorry, what evidence?" Officer Johnson leaned forward. "According to the report, you've made threats against family members, refused to return money that belongs to them, and have been displaying signs of paranoia and aggression that are out of character. Your parents are requesting a wellness check and possible intervention." I looked at Janet, who appeared as confused as I felt. "Officer Martinez, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Can you tell me specifically what they claim I've stolen or who I've supposedly threatened?" "The report indicates that your family contributed money toward your education, with the understanding that you would help with family expenses after graduation. They claim you've refused to honor that agreement and have become hostile when asked to fulfill your obligations." The creative interpretation of family support during college took my breath away. My parents had contributed exactly $0 to my education, beyond co-signing federal student loans that were entirely my responsibility to repay. Every textbook, every meal plan, every semester of tuition had been paid for with my own work or federal aid. Officers, I've never received family money for my education. I worked 3 jobs throughout college to pay my own expenses, and I've never threatened anyone. Officer Johnson pulled out a folder. "Your parents provided printouts of text messages where you've made statements about cutting family members off and refusing to participate in family obligations. They also provided testimony from several relatives who are concerned about changes in your personality since graduation." I realized they were probably referring to my conversations with Marcus about blocking phone numbers and setting boundaries filtered through whatever narrative my parents had constructed for extended family. "Can I see those text messages?" Officer Martinez showed me photocopied pages that made my heart race. The text messages were real, but they had been edited and taken completely out of context. A conversation where I told Marcus I might have to cut them off if this harassment continues was presented as "I'm going to cut them off." A message where I said, "I refuse to participate in Amanda's party funding," was shortened to, "I refuse to participate in family obligations." Most disturbing was a text I had sent to my cousin Jake saying, "I'm done with their manipulation and guilt trips," which was presented as, "I'm done with them," with the context completely removed. Officers, these messages have been edited to remove context. The original conversations were about setting boundaries with family members who were harassing me, not threatening anyone. "Mr. Matthews, do you have the original messages on your phone that we could review?" I showed them my actual text history with family members demonstrating how my parents had selectively edited communications to create the appearance of threatening behavior. Officer Martinez took notes while reviewing the full conversations. "This does appear to show different context than what was provided in the report," he acknowledged. Janet cleared her throat. "Officers, Reed has been an exemplary employee since starting here. His background check came back clean. His references were outstanding, and he's shown no signs of instability or concerning behavior in the workplace. Ma'am, we appreciate that information, but family dynamics can be different from workplace behavior. We're required to investigate all reports of potential mental health crises, especially when multiple family members express concern. Officer Johnson continued the questioning. Mr. Matthews, your parents indicate that you've been avoiding family contact and refusing to contribute to family financial needs despite having the means to help. They're worried that your new job success has affected your judgment and your commitment to family relationships. Officers, 3 weeks ago, my parents missed my college graduation to attend a stranger's graduation ceremony. Then they asked me to contribute $7,600 to my sister's birthday party. When I declined and offered $7 instead, they began a campaign of harassment that has included attempted break-ins at my apartment, false claims to my building manager, and now apparently false police reports. I provided the officers with my phone showing them the doorbell camera footage of my mother attempting to use an old key on my apartment and my father conducting surveillance of my building. I showed them Mrs. Rodriguez's video of the attempted entry and the police report I had filed about the harassment. Officer Martinez studied the footage carefully. Mr. Matthews, do you have documentation of the money request you mentioned? I showed them the original text message asking for $7,600 followed by my $7 payment and the explosive family response that followed. And you haven't received any family financial support that would create an obligation to contribute to this party? No, sir. I paid my own way through college entirely. I can provide bank records, student loan documentation, and employment records showing that I've been financially independent throughout my education. Officer Johnson made additional notes. Mr. Matthews, this information presents a very different picture than what was described in the initial report. However, we're still required to complete our wellness assessment. Are you currently experiencing any mental health issues? Thoughts of self-harm or substance abuse problems? No, sir. I'm adjusting well to my new job, I'm financially stable, and I'm not experiencing any mental health crises beyond the stress of dealing with family harassment. Janet spoke up again. Officers, I can confirm that Reed has shown excellent judgment and stability in his work here. His performance evaluations have been outstanding, and he's demonstrated strong problem-solving skills and professional behavior. After another 20 minutes of questions, the officers concluded their assessment. Officer Martinez handed me a card with a case number. Mr. Matthews, based on our investigation, we don't see evidence supporting the claims in the original report. However, this situation appears to involve ongoing family conflict that could escalate. We recommend documenting all future contact attempts and reporting any harassment or attempted unauthorized access immediately. Will my parents face any consequences for filing a false report? That depends on whether the district attorney's office determines that the report was knowingly false versus based on genuine concern. The edited text messages and contradictory evidence you've provided will be included in our report. After the officers left, Janet asked me to stay in the conference room. Reed, I need to understand what we're dealing with here. This company can't afford to have employees involved in situations that might affect workplace safety or our professional reputation. I explained the entire situation from my graduation day forward, providing the same evidence I had shown the police. Janet listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. This is clearly a family conflict rather than an employee issue, she concluded, but I need you to keep me informed if this situation escalates further. If your family continues attempting to involve your workplace, we'll need to consider additional security measures. Janet, I'm really sorry this happened here. I've been trying to handle it privately, but they seem determined to escalate until they get what they want. Reed, you're not responsible for other people's choices to behave inappropriately, but you are responsible for protecting yourself and managing this situation so it doesn't continue affecting your work environment. That afternoon, I received a call from the building security at Morrison Engineering. Someone matching my mother's description had been in the lobby asking questions about my employment and trying to speak with my supervisors. Security had escorted her out and documented the incident, but she had returned twice more throughout the day. The realization that my parents were now targeting my workplace made the situation feel desperate and dangerous. They weren't just trying to pressure me into funding Amanda's party anymore. They were actively trying to sabotage my career as leverage. I called Marcus that evening to update him on the police visit and the workplace harassment. Read, they've lost their minds. Filing false police reports and harassing your employer could get them in serious legal trouble. I think they're getting desperate. Amanda's party is this weekend, and they still haven't raised the money they need. They probably figured if they could get me declared mentally unfit, they could somehow access my finances or force me into compliance. That's not just desperate, Reed. That's sociopathic. Normal people don't try to destroy someone's career and reputation over a birthday party. That night, I barely slept replaying the events of the day and trying to anticipate what my parents might try next. The police investigation had cleared me of wrongdoing, but the damage to my workplace relationships and reputation felt significant. Several colleagues had witnessed the police visit, and I could feel them watching me attack me differently, wondering what kind of family drama I had brought into their professional environment. Wednesday morning brought another escalation. My doorbell camera captured my mother attempting to approach other tenants in my building, apparently trying to gather information about my behavior and mental state. Mrs. Chen called to inform me that a woman claiming to be my mother had contacted multiple neighbors asking questions about whether I seemed unstable or dangerous. Read, this behavior is becoming stalking. I've documented everything and I'm prepared to call police if she returns to the property again. I realized my family's campaign had evolved beyond financial pressure, beyond manipulation of extended relatives, beyond false police reports. They were now conducting what amounted to a character assassination campaign designed to isolate me professionally and socially while building support for their narrative that I was mentally unfit. The question that kept me awake that night was simple and terrifying. How far were they willing to go to get $7,600 for Amanda's birthday party? The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. On Thursday morning, I received a call from my bank's fraud prevention department. Mr. Matthews, we're calling about some irregular activity on accounts associated with your Social Security number. We show 3 credit cards and 2 personal loans that were opened using your information, but the addresses and contact information don't match our records for your account. My hands started shaking as the representative explained that someone had been using my Social Security number and identity information to obtain credit for several years. The accounts had been opened when I was 17 and 18 during my senior year of high school and first year of college. The good news is that because you would have been a minor when most of these accounts were opened, you're not legally responsible for the debt. However, this activity has significantly impacted your credit score, and you'll need to file identity theft reports to begin the correction process. I spent my lunch break at the bank reviewing printouts of the fraudulent accounts. $12,000 in credit card debt spread across 3 different cards. A personal loan for $4,800 from a credit union I had never heard of. All opened using my Social Security number, date of birth, and mother's maiden name, but listing my parents' address and phone number as contact information. The bank's fraud specialist, David Kim, walked me through the timeline. These accounts were all opened within a 6-month period, which suggests someone with access to your personal information was systematically applying for credit. The fact that they used your parents' contact information indicates this was likely done by family members rather than external identity thieves. Can you tell me if payments were ever made on these accounts? David pulled up additional screens. Minimal payments were made for the first 2 years, then the accounts became delinquent. They've been in collections for about 3 years now, which explains the negative impact on your credit score. I thought about all the times during college when I had been denied for small credit cards or student discounts that required credit checks. I had assumed my lack of credit history was the problem, never realizing that my parents had destroyed my credit before I even knew it existed. Mr. Matthews, based on the pattern here and the age when these accounts were opened, you should file both identity theft reports and consider whether this constitutes family financial abuse. There are resources available for people whose relatives have stolen their identity. That afternoon, I filed police reports for identity theft and contacted all 3 credit bureaus to begin the dispute process. But the most important call I made was to my Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you know anything about my parents using my social security number to open credit accounts? The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that I wondered if the call had dropped. Reed, honey, why are you asking about that? Because I just found out they opened multiple credit cards and loans in my name when I was 17 and 18. Did you know this was happening? Another long pause. Reed, I've been worried about this conversation for years. What do you mean? I knew they were having financial troubles when you were in high school. Your father lost his job for 6 months, and they got behind on everything. Your mother mentioned something about using your information for a small loan to cover groceries, but she made it sound temporary and necessary. Aunt Sarah, it wasn't temporary, and it wasn't small. They opened multiple accounts and ran up thousands of dollars in debt that's been destroying my credit for years. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I should have said something, but your mother swore it was just until your father found work again. She said they would pay everything off before you turned 18 so it wouldn't affect you. Oh, what? Did you know they missed my graduation to go to someone else's ceremony? What? No, that's not what happened. Your mother told me you had a small ceremony that you specifically didn't want family at because it would be too stressful. I realized my Aunt Sarah had been receiving the same carefully managed version of events as other family members. My parents had been controlling information flow for years, ensuring that no one had enough complete information to question their behavior or hold them accountable. Aunt Sarah, I need you to know the truth about what's been happening. I spent 45 minutes walking her through everything: the missed graduation, the Jessica Martinez photos, the money request, the harassment, the false police report, and now the identity theft discovery. Sarah listened without interrupting, occasionally making small sounds of distress. Reed, I had no idea. Your mother has been calling me for weeks, talking about how worried she is about your mental health and how success has changed you. She made it sound like you were having some kind of breakdown. Do you still have recordings of those conversations? Actually, yes. I've been recording all family calls since your uncle passed away because people say things about inheritance and family decisions that I want to remember accurately. I have hours of your mother talking about you about Amanda's party, about family finances. Aunt Sarah, would you be willing to share those recordings with me? I'm trying to document the pattern of harassment and manipulation. Read, some of these conversations are going to be very painful for you to hear. Your mother has been saying things about you that aren't just untrue, they're cruel. That evening, I drove to Portland to meet with Aunt Sarah and review the recordings she had mentioned. What I heard in her living room, sitting on her floral couch with a cup of coffee getting cold in my hands, was more devastating than I had prepared for. In a conversation from 2 weeks after my graduation, my mother's voice was clear and confident. Sarah, I'm really worried about Reed. He's been making threats about the family, talking about cutting everyone off, showing signs of paranoia that aren't normal for him. I think the stress of his new job is causing some kind of mental breakdown. He sent Amanda $7 for her birthday, like he was mocking her, which is just cruel behavior that isn't like the Reed we raised. In another recording from a few days later, Reed has always been the selfish one, Sarah. Even as a kid, he was always focused on himself instead of family. Now that he has a little success, it's like he thinks he's better than the rest of us. He's refusing to help with Amanda's party, even though he has the money, and he's been spreading lies about us missing his graduation, which is ridiculous because he specifically told us not to come. But the most damaging recording was from just 3 days ago. Sarah, I'm scared Reed might hurt himself or someone else. His behavior has become really erratic since graduation. He's been stalking the family, making accusations that don't make sense, and I think he might be using drugs or having some kind of psychotic episode. We might have to look into getting him committed for his own safety. My Aunt Sarah watched my face as I listened to hours of systematic character assassination disguised as concerned family discussions. Reed, your mother called me every few days for a month, always with a new story about concerning behavior or mental health worries. She was building a case with family members, making sure everyone heard consistent stories about your instability. Did she ask you to do anything specific? She wanted me to call your employer and express concern about your fitness for work. She wanted me to contact your landlord about your mental state. She even suggested that family members might need to petition for guardianship if your condition deteriorated. The scope of the campaign against me was breathtaking. My parents hadn't just been trying to pressure me into funding Amanda's party, they had been systematically destroying my reputation and credibility while building justification for legal action that could give them control over my finances and decisions. Aunt Sarah, why didn't you do any of those things? Because something felt wrong about the whole situation. The Reed she was describing didn't match the Reed I've known your whole life, and some of her stories didn't make sense when I thought about them carefully. Would you be willing to provide these recordings to police if necessary? Reed, yes, absolutely. What your parents are doing is horrible and it needs to stop. That night I called Marcus to update him on the identity theft discovery and the recordings Aunt Sarah had shared. Reed, they stole your identity when you were 17 and have been planning this manipulation campaign for weeks. This isn't family drama anymore, this is criminal behavior. I think I need to talk to a lawyer, Marcus. This has gone beyond what I can handle on my own. Definitely. And Reed, I want to testify against them if this goes to court. I've been getting calls from Mom trying to turn me against you too, and I've been playing along to gather information. I have my own recordings of her coaching me on what to tell other family members about your mental state. The realization that Marcus had been documenting my parents' manipulation attempts gave me hope that we could build a comprehensive case about their coordinated harassment campaign. Friday morning, I met with an attorney who specialized in family financial abuse and identity theft. Angela Rodriguez listened to my story, reviewed the documentation I had gathered, and provided a clear assessment. Reed, you have an exceptionally strong case for multiple civil and criminal violations: identity theft, harassment filing, false police reports, defamation, and potentially fraud, depending on how they've characterized the family financial situation to others. The recordings and documentary evidence you've gathered show a clear pattern of coordinated abuse designed to gain financial control. What are my options? We can pursue criminal charges, civil damages, or both. We can also seek restraining orders that would legally require them to stop all contact and harassment. The identity theft alone carries serious potential penalties. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had some control over the situation. My parents had overplayed their hand, escalating from financial pressure to criminal behavior, while leaving a comprehensive evidence trail of their actions. The question now wasn't whether I could prove what they had done to me. The question was how much justice I was prepared to pursue against my own family. Monday morning arrived with an email that changed everything. Officer Martinez contacted me to inform me that my parents were being charged with multiple crimes: identity theft, filing false police reports, harassment, and attempted fraud. The evidence I had provided, combined with Aunt Sarah's recordings and Marcus's documentation, had built what the prosecutor called an unusually comprehensive case of family financial abuse. Mr. Matthews, your parents will be arrested this afternoon and processed through the system. Given the nature of the charges and the documented pattern of escalating behavior, the judge will likely set significant bail and require no contact orders as a condition of release. I sat in my cubicle at Morrison Engineering, staring at the email and trying to process the reality that my parents were going to jail because they couldn't accept my refusal to fund my sister's birthday party. The chain of events from $7 to criminal charges felt surreal, but also inevitable, given their choice to escalate at every opportunity. Janet Thompson knocked on my cubicle wall. Reed, I know you've been dealing with some family issues. How are you holding up? It's been challenging, but I think it's finally being resolved through appropriate channels. Good. I wanted you to know that several colleagues have expressed support for you during this difficult time. We all recognize that family situations can be complex and that you've handled everything professionally. That afternoon, Marcus called me from Denver with unexpected news. "Reed, you're not going to believe this. Amanda just called me crying, saying she had no idea about the identity theft or the false police reports. She claims Mom and Dad told her you were just being stubborn about money, not that they were stealing your identity and harassing you." Do you believe her? Honestly, yes. Amanda is selfish and entitled, but she's not usually dishonest about facts. I think Mom and Dad have been managing what she knows just like they managed what everyone else knows. Did she say anything about the party? She canceled it, Reed. She called the venue this morning and canceled everything. She said she can't have a party that was funded through criminal behavior and that she's ashamed of what Mom and Dad did to you. The news that Amanda had finally learned the truth and made the right choice felt like a small miracle. For the first time in our relationship, she had chosen doing the right thing over getting what she wanted. Marcus, do you think she might be willing to testify about what Mom and Dad told her versus what actually happened? She already volunteered to do exactly that. Reed, I think this whole situation finally showed Amanda how manipulative and cruel our parents can be. She's talking about moving out and getting her own place. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Rodriguez knocked on my door, holding a casserole dish and wearing an apologetic expression. "Reed, I wanted to bring you some dinner and apologize for all the chaos your family has brought to our building. Mrs. Chen told me about the arrests this afternoon." "Mrs. Rodriguez, you have nothing to apologize for. You've been incredibly helpful through this whole situation. I also wanted to tell you that several neighbors have been talking, and we all think you handled this situation with remarkable maturity and restraint. A lot of people would have escalated much sooner, but you tried to resolve everything peacefully until you had no other choice. The support from my neighbors, people who had witnessed my parents' behavior firsthand, meant more than I had expected. I realized I had been worried that others would see this family conflict as evidence of something wrong with me rather than evidence of something wrong with my parents' choices. The next 2 weeks involved extensive legal proceedings, victim impact statements, and family meetings that felt like therapy sessions. Angela Rodriguez, my attorney, guided me through the process with patience and expertise, ensuring that my rights were protected while the legal system addressed my parents' crimes. The most meaningful conversation happened at the courthouse where my parents were appearing for their preliminary hearing. Amanda approached me in the hallway looking smaller and more uncertain than I had seen her since childhood. "Reed, I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I had no idea what Mom and Dad were doing to you. They told me you were just being selfish about money, not that they had stolen your identity or filed false police reports." "Amanda, I'm glad you finally know the truth." "Reed, I want to make things right. I'm going to testify for the prosecution about what they told me versus what actually happened. And I'm going to pay you back every dollar they spent on my behalf that should have gone to your education or your life." "Amanda, that's not necessary. You didn't know what they were doing." "It is necessary, Reed. I benefited from their financial abuse of you for years, even if I didn't understand that's what was happening. I can't just pretend that doesn't create an obligation." The conversation with Amanda lasted an hour, covering years of family dynamics and financial decisions that had favored her at my expense. For the first time in our adult relationship, she took responsibility for her role in enabling our parents' behavior and committed to making meaningful changes. "Reed, I'm also going to therapy to understand why I thought I deserved such expensive things when you were working 3 jobs to pay for school. That's not normal thinking, and I need to figure out how to be a better person." 6 weeks later, my parents were sentenced to 18 months of probation community service and full restitution for the identity theft. They were also required to attend financial counseling and family therapy, with no contact allowed between us until both a judge and a therapist determined they could interact responsibly. Uncle Tom called me the day after sentencing with news that surprised me. Read, your parents had to sell the house to pay for legal fees and restitution. They're moving into a small apartment, and your father is working overtime to cover their expenses. How do you feel about that, Uncle Tom? Honestly, I think it's appropriate consequences for their choices. What they did to you was terrible, and it took legal intervention for them to understand how serious their behavior was. The financial consequences my parents faced were significant, but not devastating. The house sale covered their legal obligations with enough left over for a modest fresh start. The real change was in family dynamics, where their manipulation and financial abuse had been exposed and addressed directly. 8 months after my graduation, I received a letter from my father. Angela Rodriguez reviewed it before I opened it, ensuring there were no inappropriate contact attempts or manipulation tactics. Reed, I know you have no reason to believe anything I say, but I need you to know that I understand what we did to you was wrong. The therapy sessions have helped me see how our financial stress and favoritism toward Amanda created a pattern of abuse that wasn't fair to you. I stole your identity because I was desperate and ashamed, and I justified it by telling myself it was temporary family help rather than theft. I missed your graduation because I was angry that you were succeeding when we were failing, and I didn't want to face my own feelings of inadequacy as a parent. I know these aren't excuses, just explanations. You don't owe me forgiveness, but I owe you acknowledgement that you deserved better parents than we were during this time. The letter was accompanied by documentation showing that my father had paid an additional $2,000 beyond the court-ordered restitution money to cover incidental costs like credit monitoring and legal fees that hadn't been included in the official calculation. I didn't respond to the letter immediately, but I kept it in my desk drawer and read it occasionally as I processed my feelings about family relationships and forgiveness. 1 year after my graduation, I was thriving in ways that surprised me. Morrison Engineering had promoted me to a senior analyst position based on my project performance and technical skills. I had moved to a larger apartment in a safer neighborhood, and I had started dating Sarah Kim, a teacher I met through a hiking group who valued education and personal growth. Sarah knew about my family situation and had been supportive without being intrusive, understanding that healing from family abuse takes time, and that trust needs to be rebuilt gradually. Reed, do you think you'll ever reconcile with your parents? Frakensa, she asked one evening as we cooked dinner together in my new kitchen. I think reconciliation is possible, but it has to be based on different terms than our previous relationship. They need to demonstrate that they understand what they did wrong and that they've developed healthier ways of handling family relationships and financial stress. What would that look like practically? Consistent respect for boundaries, no manipulation or guilt trips about family obligations, acknowledgement that my success belongs to me, not to family financial emergencies, and probably ongoing therapy to address the underlying problems that led to their abusive behavior. The most unexpected development was my relationship with Amanda, who had followed through on her commitments to therapy and personal growth. She had moved into her own apartment, started community college again, and was working part-time to support herself rather than relying on family financial support. Reed therapy has taught me that I was basically raised to expect other people to solve my problems and fund my wants, she explained during one of our monthly coffee meetings. That's not healthy for anyone, and it created impossible pressure on you as the family member who actually achieved financial stability. Amanda, I'm proud of you for doing the work to change those patterns. It's hard work, but it feels good to earn my own money and make my own choices. I also understand now why $7 was actually a more reasonable birthday gift than $7,600. Normal families don't expect their relatives to fund luxury parties with money they don't have. The most meaningful moment came 18 months after my graduation, when I received an invitation to Marcus's wedding in Denver. The invitation included a note, "Reed, you're the only family member I'm inviting to this wedding. You've shown me what integrity and healthy boundaries look like, and I want my marriage to start with people who represent the values I want to build my life around." At Marcus's wedding, I met his fiance's family people who asked genuine questions about my career and interests without attaching financial expectations or obligations to the conversation. Watching Marcus marry someone whose family celebrated achievements rather than exploiting them reminded me that healthy family relationships were possible. During the reception, I found myself thinking about the journey from that silent graduation ceremony to this celebration surrounded by people who valued success and supported each other's growth. The $7 I had sent for Amanda's birthday had been the beginning of setting boundaries that ultimately led to legal accountability, family healing, and my own personal freedom. Sarah joined me at Marcus's wedding meeting extended family members who had heard the whole story and understood why legal intervention had been necessary. Uncle Tom introduced her to relatives as Reed's girlfriend, who's been incredibly supportive during a difficult family situation. Reed has handled everything with such maturity and strength, Sarah told my aunt. I'm impressed by how he's created healthy relationships after experiencing so much family dysfunction. 6 months later, I received another letter from my parents, this one signed by both of them and written in their own handwriting rather than typed. Reed, we've completed 18 months of therapy and financial counseling, and we wanted to update you on the changes we've made in our lives and our thinking. We sold most of the expensive items we bought over the years, paid off all our credit card debt, and are living within a budget that doesn't require borrowing or manipulation. We understand now that our financial stress led us to make choices that were abusive to you and enabling to Amanda. We don't expect forgiveness, but we want you to know that we're different people than we were 18 months ago, and we're committed to earning back your trust through consistent actions over time, rather than words or promises. This letter felt different from the first one. Instead of explanations and apologies, it contained specific behavioral changes and acknowledgement of ongoing responsibility. Angela Rodriguez reviewed it and confirmed that there were no manipulation tactics or inappropriate pressure for reconciliation. 2 years after my graduation, I was promoted again at Morrison Engineering and had the financial stability to buy a small house in a neighborhood I loved. Sarah and I had moved in together, creating a home environment based on mutual support, shared goals, and celebration of each other's achievements. The house had a small office where I displayed my engineering diploma, finally framed and hanging in a place of honor rather than propped against kitchen appliances. Next to it, I hung a photo from Marcus's wedding, showing both of us smiling and confident, representing the healthy family relationships we had built as adults. When colleagues asked about my family, I was honest about the challenges we had faced while focusing on the positive changes that had emerged from addressing those problems directly. My family went through a difficult period around financial stress and unhealthy dynamics, but legal intervention and therapy helped everyone develop better patterns. My brother and sister and I have good relationships now, and my parents are working to rebuild trust through consistent, respectful behavior. The story I told was true, but focused on growth and accountability rather than victimization and blame. I had learned that healing from family abuse meant neither minimizing what had happened nor allowing it to define my identity permanently. The most meaningful measure of my success came during a conversation with my mentor at Morrison Engineering, Dr. Patricia Wells, who had guided my career development since my first day at the company. Reed, you've shown remarkable resilience and judgment during your time here. You've handled personal challenges while maintaining professional excellence, and you've demonstrated the kind of character and integrity that makes me confident in your potential for leadership. Dr. Wells, I think experiencing family dysfunction actually taught me a lot about setting boundaries, documenting problems clearly, and solving conflicts through appropriate channels, rather than avoidance or escalation. Those are exactly the skills that make excellent engineers and managers. You've turned difficult personal experiences into professional strengths. 3 years after my graduation, Sarah and I got engaged, planning a wedding based on celebration and community rather than obligation and expense. We invited family members who had shown support and growth while setting boundaries with those who hadn't yet demonstrated the ability to participate in healthy relationships. My parents were invited to attend but not participate in the ceremony itself, a compromise that acknowledged their progress while protecting my wedding day from potential drama or manipulation. Amanda was invited as a full participant, reflecting the genuine changes she had made in her life and our relationship. Marcus served as my best man, and during his speech at the reception, he said something that captured the meaning of our family's journey. Reed taught all of us that love without respect is manipulation, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior. He saved our family by insisting on accountability and consequences. The wedding reception was everything my graduation ceremony hadn't been, filled with people celebrating my achievements, supporting my future, and treating success as something to honor rather than exploit. As I looked around the reception hall, seeing colleagues from work, friends from my hiking group, Sarah's family, and the relatives who had supported me through the legal crisis, I realized that the $7 I had sent Amanda for her birthday had been the first step toward building this life. Standing there with Sarah, surrounded by people who valued integrity and mutual support, I understood that healthy families aren't created by blood relationships or shared history. They're created by consistent choices to treat each other with respect, celebrate achievements without exploitation, and handle conflicts through honest communication rather than manipulation. The life lesson that emerged from my family's crisis was simple but profound. True love supports people's success and growth rather than trying to control or exploit it. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting boundaries that force people to face the consequences of their choices and develop healthier ways of relating. My parents had taught me through their mistakes and their eventual accountability that family relationships work best when they're based on mutual respect rather than obligation, and that forgiveness becomes possible when it's earned through changed behavior rather than demanded through guilt or manipulation. As Sarah and I danced to our wedding song, I felt grateful not just for the love and partnership we had built, but for the difficult journey that had taught me how to recognize healthy relationships and create the boundaries necessary to protect them. The $7 had cost me a family crisis, but gained me a life built on integrity, respect, and genuine celebration of success. It was the best investment I had ever made. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who tried to exploit your success or manipulate your achievements? How did you handle the pressure to prioritize family obligations over your own well-being and financial stability? Share your experiences in the comments below. And let's support each other in building healthy relationships based on mutual respect rather than guilt and obligation. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building healthy boundaries, and share this with anyone who might be struggling with similar family financial abuse or manipulation. Your support helps create a community where people can heal from toxic relationships and build better lives. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve relationships that celebrate your success rather than trying to exploit it. Sometimes saying no to unhealthy demands is the first step towards saying yes to the life you deserve to build.